feeding them? Who's teaching them? Who's triggering them to do these horrible acts?
Okay.
I would say sometimes, though, and I agree with Dan on that, but I would also say sometimes, though, these people are working on their own on it, that they did whatever, they were loners, they read stuff, it got incorporated in their head, they watched videos or whatever too. I think that's also true. I think it's also important that the laws that have to be defined better on what a hate crime is. So if there is such a thing, that individual can be prosecuted and found guilty of that. I'm going to digress here, just mention the Rittenhouse case. And part of the reason that he got off was that the way the laws are in Wisconsin on that regarding self-defense. Was not, I was thinking perhaps he might get on a lower charge, but it didn't happen. They took 3 days on it. They obviously went through it thoroughly. And I would look at that as you need to have good laws in there so you can prosecute and find that individual guilty because you want to win that case.
Yeah, I will agree on that, Charlie. I spent a large portion of yesterday afternoon walking around in my house, shaking my head. It's like, how the hell do you get off on all charges? Yeah, I was talking to myself. I was around the house. I was like talking to myself like a fool. How do you get off on all damn charges? It's just mind blown.
Well, I think there's two issues on that case. The one issue is obviously that, and I don't want to digress too much here, but that his mother took him over state lines with a big gun to another town so he could play pseudo cop. That's what I think happened on that. However, the incident where the shootings happened in the context of that moment in time could be argued, and it was successfully, as self-defense, according to the laws up there.
Hey,
exactly. Whether you think it's right or not, that's another issue. But there's two things on there. Unfortunately, we couldn't, I don't know the laws of it. They could not charge him because his mom took him up there with a big gun and he could go play cop,
Yeah, we'll save the rest of that for another topic. Karen, did you want to say something?
What I wanted to say was one of the reasons, as Charlie said, one of the reasons why a lot of people are not being acquitted of charges is the laws on the books in each state. Each state, the laws determine the charge. And based on what they're being charged with, that's how their attorneys defend them. And that's what they did. And in Wisconsin, the way the law is written, and he had excellent attorneys. Once they created the doubt, when they went into deliberations, and they couldn't render a decision after 24 hours of deliberating, that meant there was doubt placed. And, but that's all I wanted to say, because let's,
Okay.
And they pay good money for those attorneys too, so.
I'm wondering if they did it, if the attorneys provided their services for free.
Well, we will.
There was a fund.
We will definitely talk about that in the upcoming episode for sure, sure. But I want to get to the end of this Asian hate. There's a tendency, Robert, for Asian Americans to avoid reporting crimes in general.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak on that a little bit? Like they may be the victim of a crime and not report it.
A lot of the times that happens in every new community of immigrants. What's happened since the late 19th century is that Asians were legislated against. Our wives couldn't come over, or rather our women couldn't come over because they associated Chinese women with, illicit, professions like prostitutions, and they didn't want that. Oh my goodness. And they didn't want any more laborers, from China. And those that overstayed their visa, and, we wouldn't have the population today if it weren't for these guys, were illegally here. Who were they going to report a crime to? what were they going to do? Well, this guy hit me. You're here illegally. Well, not only are we going to, get rid of you, we're not going to do crap about it.
Mhm.
So the Chinese communities, as well as the new immigrants that are coming over from the Middle East and everything else, and whatever the status is, do not have the laws of America on their side quite yet. And they're not going to report those crimes. I'd love to hear the stats on the new immigrants from South America, how many times they're beat up, how many times they're murdered, kidnapped, tortured, whatever, shot at the border, whatever, that remains unreported. All I hear about is there's 2,000 of them coming our way, boys, get ready. What the So
Beep, beep,
that's
beep,
my
beep.
take on that.
And not only that, but the actual numbers are not being reported. Supposedly for the information to get to the federal level, it has to go through the local, the state cops, the law enforcement. And in a lot of cases, well, first of all, the victims are not reporting it. And then those lower law enforcements, they're not reporting it to the feds as well. So the data is not accurate when it gets to the federal level. If you put junk in, you're going to get junk out.
And do you really want me to report this? Because then we're going to start digging into you and your family, and
Exactly.
we're going to see everything.
Exactly.
Well, I kind of disagree with that, because the last administration refused to provide data on anything, and they talked around a lot of things, and that's one of the reasons why we don't know anything today. There was a time when we could open up a newspaper or watch the news and see statistics. We still don't even know how the census came out.
And that's why the numbers that I mentioned in the beginning was not the same numbers that I found in the winter, or late winter, because that information was not available. But since then, somebody has been able to scratch and dig and find some additional numbers. In fact, the state was, I believe, Ohio. They found some more data and added it to it. And that's what I reported today. So yeah, it's a problem the whole way around. I'm going to ask at this time, we get into the end of this episode, any last thoughts? Any last thoughts about this Asian hate deal? I feel that we as a people must be more inclusive. We have to get to know people, especially when you interact with them. Maybe you go to school with them. Maybe you live near them. My mother-in-law lives near Chinatown in Chicago, and I would not even verbalize some of the things that she says. She's 83, 85. I wouldn't verbalize some of the things she says about people that live with her in this senior building. It's just crazy. If I was in a building with people, I mean, we're all one big community, I would know some Chinese words. I would know how to say hello or good morning, in some kind of language, but that's the state of the world. Last thoughts, people.
I was part of a diversity team, and we had a meeting, and we were talking about diversity and meeting people and knowing people. And what I said to them was, the same negative statement that you say about another ethnic group, somebody said that about your ethnic group. So be careful and cautious and respectful what you say. And remember, somebody could be saying those ugly things about you. And what happens is the media hypes all the negative stuff, but when things happen to someone from a different ethnic group, people come together in ways that they can't even explain. And when they report it as if it's a new phenomenon. It's something that's been going on forever. And if you are a person who's going to see people for who they are, whatever their ethnicity is wouldn't matter to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Karen. Robert, any last thoughts? 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of Asian hate, it's not new that whoever is pulling the strings is pit one group against another, and it's always recognizable groups that you see going at each other. It's not so much that these groups are now thinking about and forced to defend themselves and create their own little communities, their own little security forces, their own little this and that. It's been the government's job to this point to make sure that our ethnic communities rely and stay dependent on them for one reason or another, whether it's under the guise of diversity, inclusivity, representative of the population of the neighborhood, and elite schools versus the surrounding environment. And it's all these little ways to keep factions apart rather than together. The Asian immigration experience is the same as it was for any other group coming in that wasn't here first. And because of that commonality, that's not a good thing. That's a unifying force. So we have to find ways to keep ethnic groups apart. Oh, most Asians are conservative. Most blacks are liberal. Most Middle Eastern guys, who knows? That sort of thing. For goodness sake, until we can realize and wake up and see what's actually happening, these hate crimes and these divisions within the ethnic communities will start going away as we realize who's actually pulling the strings.
Right.
It ain't us. There's a big
people.
old group out there and we're not invited.
Wake up, people. Dan, last thoughts.
Well, I think it's good to still push for better laws and better policies, but I think what's really going to make the difference, and this is not just with Asian hate, this is with hate, similar to what Robert was talking about, is we have to share our stories. We just have to sit down one-on-one and share our stories. I need to learn Robert's story and Karen's story and Charlie's story and Calvin's story, and you need to learn my story. And I think what we'll find is that, probably 80% of it overlaps. And then we have some uniqueness around that, which I actually think is an advantage as opposed to a detriment to our society, is to have that variety. And I think it really comes down to, this is going to have to be grassroots. It's going to have to be individual. I don't think we solve it necessarily going out in the streets and protesting, although those do help in some regards to push the needle. But we need to be able to learn to talk to each other, to disagree in a civil manner, and to really just share our stories.
All right. I agree, Dan. Charlie, 1 minute.
I think that I'm a big believer that if the world gets better, it's because individuals do it and not necessarily groups. So each and every one of us go out there, listen, learn, love one another, and learn about each other. That is the only way that we will become a better place.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, panelists, for this great, stimulating conversation. We have hit upon, I think, a common thread at the end. The only way to fix this thing and get to know each other better is to actually share our stories. Once we share our stories, we're going to find out there's a lot of things that are similar and that bind us than things that separate us. So I want to thank you all for checking out Diverse Talking Heads. I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs, and as always in parting, we want to see you at the next episode of Diverse Talking Heads.